When it was time, I decided to slowly walk up to Carl's dead body and uncover him. I saw he had his overalls on, and I decided to take it off. I decided to cut his chest open to see his lungs. When I finished, I noticed a big dent on his head, later looking more into that. Hey, I need help. Can you come help me?
Sure, glad to help.
I don't think you'll be glad. I just opened the school.
Okay, thanks for telling me.
Yeah, come on. It'll just take a minute. I just want to show you where you're up against. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't this important.
Oh, that's ugly. Jesus.
Yeah, I just cut through the durameter, and it isn't a pretty good view if you look at it. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, well, from what I can see, it looks like he hit his head on the edge of something, and that could have been the cause of him drowning, but I don't know for sure.
Can you find out?
Maybe?
When?
I have to look at his chest and lungs are, but that won't give me a for sure reason of what happened to him.
His chest?
That's right.
What are the possibilities?
Possibilities? Anything could have happened. He could have had a heart attack and filled his lungs up with water. Maybe a stroke? The cause could have been alcohol. But all I want to know is how he hit his head and just went over the boat. But with the dent in his head, we can't come to one conclusion. There are many possibilities, but for right now, we can only get to one.
That bang to the head. That bang to the head is kind of funny, you know?
Yeah, it could be.
Well, couldn't it be that somebody hit him? Isn't that a possibility?
So you want to play Sherlock Holmes? You want to play a detective now?
Not really, but Sherlock Holmes isn't here, is he? And this wound in Carl's head is.
That's true. You got that right.
This case
now draws to a close, and it will be your duty in just a few moments to retire to the room reserved for you
and deliberate together toward a verdict. Toward that end, ladies and gentlemen, the court charges you to take into account the following considerations. First of all, in order to find the defendant guilty, you must be convinced of every element of the charge, beyond a reasonable doubt. If a reasonable doubt exists in your minds, you cannot convict the accused man. This is a duty you are bound to by law. No matter how strongly you feel yourself compelled to act in any other manner, you can convict only if you are certain it is correct to do so beyond a reasonable doubt. Second, you must keep in mind the specificity of the charge and address that charge exclusively. You have only to determine one thing here, whether or not the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree and nothing else. You were selected in this case in the belief that each of you could, without fear, favor, prejudice, or sympathy, in sound judgment and clear conscience, render a just verdict and evidence presented on conformity with these instructions. Each juror should listen with the disposition to be convicted to the opinions and arguments of the other jurors. You must listen to one another. Stay objective and be reasonable. Ladies and gentlemen, since these are criminal proceedings, understand that your verdict, whether guilty or not, must be a unanimous one. The outcome of this trial is up to you now. You may adjourn and begin your deliberations.
Well, I guess it comes down to the feeling, doesn't it? I feel uncertain. I feel a doubt. That's what matters, right? Now look here. Nobody ain't sure of any of this. It's unreasonable for you to act like a dog-headed stubborn. What's reasonable is us talking here, discussing this problem right here, right now. You're what's unreasonable, Alex.
I can see where you're driving at. I know what you're trying to say, Alex, and I've thought that way about it myself. But look here and think about the straight-off evidence. That mooring line was off his boat. That blood was on his fishing gaff. Mosley lied about replacing his battery, but things like that, it was fishy. He just didn't show me nothing. Me neither. Didn't show me a thing either. It was just suspicious how he sat there like that, said one thing about it to the sheriff one time, and then later changed his melody. A person can't go changing his tune without the rest of us thinking on it, Mr. Van Ness. Don't you agree that man's a liar?
Now look again. What do you think drives a man to lie? Usually, when there's a lie, there's a story behind it. But in this case, all he's been telling us is lies. And I don't think we can believe him. All right. Well, the real question here is, what is he trying to hide? Is he trying to hide that he's the real murderer behind this case? I just have my doubts. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to disagree with you guys.
Now think about it this way. There's a man. He's got 2 guns. One to your son's head and the other to your wife's. He tells you to take a second to decide which he should shoot. And if you don't decide, he'll shoot them both. Now, of course, you've got your doubts either way, but you have to decide. Because this man's getting ready to pull both triggers. You can't just decide troubles are going to go away. You have to just face it head on.
See, that's a good example, but I'm not really in that situation. Try to think of it this way. There's a comet coming to you and a big chunk of the moon. It's rushing to you, and you have to doubt what would be safer for you to do. Of course, that would take time, but right here, we can't doubt everything. It's just unreasonable. It'd be unreasonable for me to move to another chair. I'd rather take the risk. It's nothing to be worried about.
We're not even talking about the evidence anymore. All these hypothetical examples aren't going to get us anywhere. How are we going to convince him what's reasonable without talking about the facts presented by the prosecutor, step by step, each one? Now look here, Mr. Van Ness. Don't you think that mooring line has to tell us something?
I think it does. It tells me that Kabuo was on board in Carl's boat. There's not much doubt here.
That's one thing. That's something anyway. All right. After our lengthy adjournment and newfound evidence, court rules